Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday and welcome to the Change Podcast. This is Insights into Empowerment, and each of our guests has a very unique story that's going to help you empower yourself. And today we have a very amazing guest. He is a former Division I professional athlete playing for not only Cal Berkeley, but for the Boston Red Sox. He is also a recovery addict and a brain cancer survivor. So, Michael Bugary, welcome to our stage. Let's get started talking about your amazing journey.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm grateful to be here.
Good. Now, you were a former Division I athlete. While you were playing baseball, is that when your addiction started?
Yeah, yes and no. Yes and no. I think baseball was my first addiction, right?
Oh,
Because I
interesting.
think I think like anything, addiction when it becomes a source of getting what you needed, right? That's when it becomes an addiction. Like baseball was my way of getting attention and validation. It was this character that I created, this identity, and and as long as it became my higher power. And I think that's what drugs do, right? They become your higher power, your central focus, and that's what baseball became for me. And so and I did experiment with things like alcohol and other things that, but none of that really helped me with baseball until I started to do more pharmaceuticals like Adderall and stuff that helped me with that. But those were all like side dishes to the main course with baseball, right? So but then when I lost baseball is then when it really took off.
Wow. And I know I've known a lot of players from a long time ago, but my daughter in high school knew a lot of players. And there's a lot of ego involved in baseball, isn't there?
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
I think it has to be kind of, it's like a, well, baseball is such a game based on failure, right? Which is why I always say it's so similar to life because in baseball you only, especially as a hitter, you fail 7 out of 10 times, and you have to learn how to just to be always messing up and always failing, but still keeping that positivity. I think ego and having that self delusion really helps with that. And that's why I always told my sister, yeah, no baseball players, even though it's friendly fire, you know what I mean? Like we're a different breed, yeah.
Yeah, that's tough because, I know from myself having kind of banished the ego a long time ago, it can lie to you a lot.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, and the more you do it, the easier it becomes, right? And that's when it becomes your truth, right? And when I live in my truth, like I say that I have the reverse Midas touch, where in my truth everything turns to crap and not gold. So I have to
Um,
I have to I have to get away from that.
yeah,
But yeah, no,
and go
go ahead.
ahead.
No, yeah, the ego thing, it's yeah, it's hard. And the hardest thing I think for me with that is when I get to a place where I need to ask for help, when everything's just come crashing down on me. That ego prevents me from doing that and just makes me fall further and further into suffering.
Wow, that's a pretty intense statement, and I hope people are listening to that because suffering. We didn't come here to suffer, but there's so many things that can lead you down that path. So when you talk about suffering, what were you suffering from? How did it start?
Yeah, I think, I think struggling and suffering are two different things, right? I think we all struggle, and I still struggle today now, but I think for suffering, it's mostly self-inflicted. Like I was just saying with that inability to ask for help. It started too when I lost baseball and lost my identity, and when I learned, playing with the Red Sox, my second year, I had an arm injury that ultimately ended my career.
Mhm.
And when I learned from doctors that I could never throw right again, or basically that I could never pitch the same way that I once was, I didn't have any acceptance of it, and I went into these cycles of where I would binge opiates and then find some motivation and then get hurt again, and then just this constant, constant back and forth of trying to do that, a vicious cycle of it. And I think the suffering would be, the detoxing from the opiates, but also that just that mental, that the suffering of just like trying to like push that rock up the hill, but it kept coming back down, just over and over again. And it's such a dark place to be in. And then
Oh,
further that
absolutely.
further that with when I was diagnosed with brain cancer, and then it became not only mental but physical as well. And I fell further into the addiction of just suffering and physical and mental pain.
Wow. Now, were the opiates that you talk about prescribed because of injuries? So a doctor prescribed those?
Yes, yeah, and I have to always clarify this because I think it's important for me because I'm very good at like making myself sound better or story sound better than it is or embellishing a little bit. But like I like to say that yeah, I was this promising, talented athlete, and I was in a lot of ways, with a bright future, and that this I suffered this traumatic career-ending injury, and then due to an unsuccessful surgery I was introduced to painkillers and all these opiates, and that's a great story where I'm like the hero and the victim, right? It's a great story to tell, and I think a lot of people's stories start that way, but it's not necessarily the truth in the sense that I had experimented with opiates and I had tried these things before at the time, things like oxycontin, and I knew exactly what they were going to do to me. Just without baseball, I didn't care anymore because really what I wanted to do
Mm.
is I wanted to be alone and I didn't want to feel. And nothing works better for that than painkillers.
Yeah, yeah, I've had to take them for surgery as well, and boy, I got to a point where I'm like, okay, I'd rather to have the pain than this feeling. I
Yeah,
didn't like the feeling,
yeah.
so I just suffered through it. But when did you realize, or what was your catalyst to realize that you were an addict?
Ooh, like a turning point, kind of, right? I think there's been
Yes.
there's a few of them. I think I always knew I had a problem. I knew, like, I think my first stint into rehab where, I realized, hey, maybe I need to quit the hard stuff, but maybe I'm not alcohol and those other things aren't really my problem. I just need somebody like to teach me how to use heroin on the weekends like a gentleman, right? That's what I really wanted. But that doesn't really work out that way. And I think that kind of gave me the idea that I had a problem. And then as I continued down this road of just like poor decision out there, that things got worse and worse and worse. And into my physical pain, I got into this point where, I was in this, I call it the limbo of agony, where I was in too much pain with all the side effects of my cancer treatment to move, and too much pain to sit still. And I had to like roll over and die, or I had to do something different. And I think when I got that willingness to start to do things differently, I started to take some suggestions, and I learned how to meditate, and got back into exercising and stuff. And then my thinking started to change. And then I had that moment where I realized that, what a jerk that I am. And it put all these things in perspective, that all the damage that I've been doing to my family and the people around me. And I just saw that, that these patterns in my life were not just because of drugs and alcohol. They're symptoms of my bigger disease. That's why I call it the disease of me, because
Wow.
that's what I am, and I am always my biggest problem. And when I had that revelation, then I could start to actually identify those things and start to make some changes to move forward and to live in a solution.
Wow. And one of the hardest things we have to do as humans is look at ourselves and say, you know what? You're the problem. You're the
Yeah,
problem. You created a lot of this uncreated, and that's really hard. And that's a lot of mirror work to do, because we always like to push the blame on someone else. But unless we do take responsibility for ourselves, there's no change.
yeah. Well, like I said, I was at that point of where I was just like, I either had to roll over and die, and I had to see things, in a different way. And I was, like you said, I was so full of anger and blame, right? That was buried, so deep under layers of denial. Because the truth was that, because anger and blame are so much easier than taking responsibility, right? It's so, but the truth was is that all those bad things that happened to me were actually my fault. And all these resentments and things that I had from people, or the way I was treated, or this and that, were all products of the way that I behaved towards them. So I just had to clean up my side of the street, and to realize that, I can't hold on to these things where I don't put in perspective my behaviors towards them too. And I started to realize, hey, like, maybe my time with the Red Sox didn't ruin my arm. Maybe I was going out and partying and abusing medication when I should have been focusing more on my rehab. Or maybe God didn't give me brain cancer because in my desperation to fix my arm, I was the one that chose to buy human growth hormone and other anabolic steroids, from a shady source, and misuse them without medical supervision that probably caused my tumor. So I gave myself brain tumor. And once I was able to see all this, take responsibility, and then I could move forward from that, and then start to see this perspective of, hey, maybe it's not about the things that I lost. It's about what I gained from them, and how can I use those things into a different domain in my life.
Wow, that is such a huge statement that you're making, and I wish everybody could hear that. I'm so excited to hear you say how you took responsibility. That's huge, and how it's changed your life. Now, how did you discover the brain cancer? At what point did that come along?
Yeah, so after a couple years, probably 3 or 4 years ago, after my baseball injury, and I got hurt again, and I felt my arm pop again, and I fell into my addiction progressed more into heroin, and at that point, I didn't have the capacity to keep up appearances anymore, right? To live this dual life where everything was good on the outside, and on the inside I was, just hollow, I didn't care anymore. I was all invested into that, and my family started to take notice, and they helped me get into a treatment center in Arizona, and when I got there, I didn't wasn't with an open mind, and I learned some things. But like I was saying earlier, when I got out, I was quickly living the same way that I once was in Arizona, and so then I just started to, I got, went through these ups and downs, and I started to turn my life around a little bit, and I started just to experience these headaches randomly out of nowhere, headaches that were too intense to ignore, and when I got to the emergency room and I was complaining about that, they get you in pretty quick, when you're complaining about those type of symptoms. And that's when I learned that, I had a medulloblastoma, a size of a lacrosse ball in my cerebellum, the part of your brain that controls voluntary movement, amongst other things.
That's crazy. And you said something, you talked about taking heroin as I think you said a gentleman,
Yeah,
with a
yeah,
gentleman.
yeah.
I've never heard that before. What does that mean?
Well, I mean, like what I meant was like, as a joke, like I need somebody just to teach me how to do it on the weekends, to be like a weekend warrior. You know what I mean? Just
I see.
when it's not something that you can just do on the weekends. That was my mindset. Where maybe I just need somebody to teach me to use these things just normally like a gentleman, right? Right?
Okay.
But it's like a joke, like that. There's no such thing as using that like a gentleman. You know what I mean? It's an everyday thing, and my mindset was so flawed in the sense where I needed somebody to teach me. I thought I could have somebody just teach me to like just to use a little bit here and there, right? So that's what I meant. Like I didn't care. I don't want them to teach me about addiction and all. I didn't care about any of that. I just need somebody to show me how to use this the right way. Like there was
Wow.
one, like there is
Wow.
one, right?
Exactly, exactly. And I'm glad that you're saying that, because do you think starting on the OxyContin led you down that road to
Abs-
heroin, or that
Absolutely.
idea?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
absolutely, absolutely. Because with every injury that I was talking about, that vicious cycle earlier, with every injury that happened, and every time I failed, and I went back to it, it got a little bit worse. Then I started to use it a little bit differently. Then I started to abuse OxyContin. I started to smoke it, and then soon the pharmaceutical companies realized it was a huge problem, and then they stopped making OxyContin in the way that you could abuse it anymore. So once you progress to using it a certain way, you don't just go back to just to pop in it normally anymore. You're already invested into the ritual and all the other things that's involved in that. And so when they stop doing that, then the next step is, heroin is cheaper and better because I don't have access to the other things. And I think that was like that for a lot of people that got hooked onto certain things, and then all of a sudden they don't have access to it anymore. And then they go to something differently. And that's what it was too with doctors. Doctors with me started out as my drug dealers, and so I learned to manipulate them. And then once I didn't have them anymore, then it progresses.
Wow, that's so. Let's go back to when you found out that you had that tumor. Were you still partaking in drug abuse, or had
Not
you
not
sobered up?
I sobered up. I sobered up. I was off and on for a few years, but I sobered up. But just after I was in chemotherapy and radiation, I had some really nasty treatment, and 2 weeks after I found out that I was in remission, and my mom found me passed out on my car with drug paraphernalia on my lap. Right? Because I went right back to it because it was a solution for me. Now I was in physical pain, and I think part of that was, my family had told the doctors that I was an addict, so they were very regulatory on my stuff they were giving me, and I was in so much pain, and I needed something for something. So yeah, throughout that I was off and on, and the only reason I wasn't using before my brain cancer is because I got into a little bit of trouble where I had to take drug tests. So that's the only
Mm,
reason why I wasn't.
wow. Wow. What a story. So, what did that feel like to be told? Were you in your right mind to understand how serious that was to have a tumor such as that?
No, not really. I was indifferent, I think, in a lot of ways. It was, it was just it all happened so fast, and I was getting, all these percentages put on my life, and all this other stuff. I
Yes.
just I couldn't even comprehend it, and And I always tell this especially when I speak famously the story about my mom had just come, and she was in the hospital room with me, and she's sitting while the doctor's doing all this stuff, talking to me about all these percentages, and never once did I turn to her and wonder what she's going through. Like after she just put me in treatment, and now she's got a kid with a brain tumor that's most likely going to kill me. That was the assessment, right? And I was too worried about like the drugs that I was going to get. Like, I was like, in my mind, I was like, hey, I'm going to get through this. This is just, let me bite down on a stick, and this is just pain. I'll deal with it. Just give me some good drugs, and I'll get through it. And I was indifferent to that, since I wasn't praying to God or worrying. I was just like, hey, just give me some stuff, and let's go through it. I think that I was a little bit dead on the inside without baseball. I didn't accept a life without it.
Wow. So it just numbed you.
Yeah.
Everything numbed you.
Yeah.
And, I love that you bring up that part about your mother because, mothers are warriors,
Oh yeah.
and it doesn't matter how old our children are. We are absolute warriors for them. So I can't even imagine how hard that was on her.
Oh yeah. No, I broke her heart over and over again, and it's hard. It's hard, and it's one thing I'm so grateful now today that I just have this really open, amazing relationship with her.
Good.
Yeah, and her birthday's in a few days, and I'm looking forward to making her dinner or going out and planting all her flowers for her whole garden. Looks really nice because I planted them all. So, but yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. That is so wonderful. Now, did you have to have surgery to remove that brain tumor?
Yeah, two
What
surgeries.
was
Yeah.
that like?
Yeah, that wasn't fun. Yeah. Uh, no,
To say the least,
no,
right?
no. I mean, the worst part, I had two surgeries. The first surgery got 80% out, and the second one got the other 20 out. And the worst part was having to go back in for the MRIs right after the surgery. It was terrible. But before that, I forget exactly what the procedure is called. It's where they had to make sure my spinal tap was my spinal fluid wasn't pooling. So they had to take the surgical saw kind of thing and like drill my a
Oh,
hole like a hole in my head. I forget the name for it. I read about it in my book, but it's I had to be awake for that. That wasn't fun at all. At least
oh
with the
my
surgery,
gosh.
I could be passed out, and the chemotherapy and the radiation I think was really bad too. It was all really painful. I think once as people know that have been through a lot of pain, after a while you can get used to it, especially when it's acute, like right at the time. If you have some help with it. I think the hardest part for the whole experience for me was realizing when it was all over a few months after that the side effects that I was going to experience that were probably going to be permanent, that I still deal with today. That just having that realization that I didn't know. My body just wasn't functioning right. I just had nerve pain all over my body. Just, I could barely walk without pain, hypersensitivity. I didn't know if I could, have children or physically be with a woman. And I was 27 years old, just dealing with all of that. That really messed me up more than any physical pain could have.
Yeah, that's a lot to deal with anytime, but being younger and having your whole life ahead of you, wanting to live life to the fullest, that had to be like a shock to your system.
Yeah, it was, and I think it's hard to say too, because at that time too, I just found myself in a familiar place, just isolating and wanting to be alone, because I wasn't living my best life, without it. I was still depressed even before that, and I think this just piled it on to now, to where I think before that cancer diagnosis, there was always some like hope that I can figure this out. Some hope to recover. I would get in good shape, and then I would get out of it. But after that, where it just physically just destroyed my body, where I lost like 70 pounds and all my hair, and just I looked like
Mm.
a skeleton of myself. And when that became real, I think that just yeah, it just really made the physical and mental just crushing on the inside.
Wow. Now, did you know you needed to go to rehab, or were you in denial and your parents were like, come on, we're taking you?
Oh, they did the intervention thing on me. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I make the joke that it's like the reverse surprise party. Um, yeah, I wasn't too thrilled about that,
Yeah.
but yeah, but I mean, they gave me an ultimatum to where you lose your family, you know or you go to treatment, and I was too spoiled and pompous to be homeless. So I decided to go. Yeah,
Wow.
but and I had to go back a few different times to in different ways
And
to
so is addiction, even though you've beat it and you're other on the other side of this, do you still get cravings or remember things that make you want to, like, okay, if I just do it once?
yes and no. There's a couple things about it. I think so. My I relapsed long before a drink or drug. I relapsed with behaviors. So I've learned that there's the patterns of my behaviors, right? That will lead up to it, and having that social system around me, support system around me, helps me a lot with that. Like if I don't do something, or if I'm not here somewhere or having that routine, somebody will connect with me for early on. But yes and no. Like sometimes I'll think like, hey, maybe I can, alcohol wasn't my problem or this and that. But what immediately follows with that is the consequences, right? Because maybe I can drink one beer, and I can do it for a month. I can go to a bar and have a couple of drinks and not. But what's going to happen is like something that always happens. Something's going to happen in my life where I'm going to go get what I really want. And once I open that door, I can't come back from it. And so yes, I do sometimes, because the thing about my disease and me is that it's terminal. I am the way I am because not for no other reason that I'm selfish. I like attention, and I'd rather get high and avoid my problems. I love getting high. I will always love getting high. But what I don't love is what comes with it. I hate that more. And I
Yeah.
have to recognize that. And as long as I feel that and hate that more, then that thought that is fleeting and it goes right away because it goes instantly into the consequences. And what I've been given, the second gift is a purpose, and I'm so motivated, and I feel obligated in a sense to share my story and to help other people. And the only way that I can do that is if I stay sober. And that's not the only thing that keeps me through it. I have to work on myself and do all these other things, but that's a huge part of it to me because I know the second that craving comes in my mind, the instant that thought happens to where I lose everything.
Wow, that's such a big admission to make. And who are you trying to help when you say you're helping people?
Yeah,
Athletes? Anybody?
yeah, anybody. Yeah, like I said, I speak a lot to like athletes, people going through addiction, and people who overcome, serious injuries like cancer. I think anybody. I call it the triple crown of adversity, right? If you're American or anybody living, really, either sports, addiction, or cancer has impacted your life in some way or another, right? And I've been through the extremes of all three, and so my biggest goal is to help. We all face challenging times, in whatever capacity that may be. And I think that a lot of times, and this is why I define that my disease as terminal uniqueness, is that there's this we have this national ability to think that we're different, or our struggle is unique, and it's not. All of our pain is the same, and we have so much more in common than we think we do. And it's the story of other people facing insurmountable odds and overcoming really challenging times that really helped me. And it's my hope that my story and the things that I've been through can help other people that face a similar situation. And the only way that I can do that is to be completely honest. Even if it hurts me sometimes to say some of these things out loud, I have to, because that it's not enough of it is talked about in that sense. It really isn't. Just so.
And I always tell people this: it vulnerability is the new superpower, because people don't just want to hear someone talk. They want in depth. Tell us what happened to you.
Yeah.
How did you get over it? So you have quite a powerful story, because you should be with baseball, drugs, and brain cancer. You should be strike three, you're out. And here
Yeah.
you are, not only talking about it but owning it. And I think it's our duty to help other people when you've gone through something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's something that I was always looking for a way to identify it. And when I have a book coming out hopefully at the end of the year, and I was researching that something called post-traumatic growth, right? Was where, there's a percentage of people that have gone through a lot of trauma that actually learn how to gain and find meaning from the suffering, and then have that willingness and that appreciation, almost an obligation to share that and to help other people. And that's how I feel. I think that all those things that I've been through have, I don't I don't regret any. I think they've all made me stronger, and I think they made me better at a better person in the sense of recognizing it. But I think at the same time too, as I have to always recognize that I'm always going to be a certain way too, and I have to learn how to accept me as who I am, right? Then I can accept you as you, and then no longer do I live in the world of just me anymore. I think that's really
Wow.
important.
I think it is too. I think it is too. We get so caught up in self that we put blinders on and we don't look around to see that there is suffering. There are other people out there,
Yeah,
that might need your help, or just, just a kind word. Instead of looking away, maybe just make eye contact and smile. Sometimes it can be that simple.
yeah. Well, I think we're in such a me-centric society in a sense to where I think sometimes, and this is I have to only speak for myself because this is how I was. I didn't even realize, even comprehend how selfish and just the way that I viewed things were, that and then when I realized how much helping other people or just being outside of me really helps me and changes the way that I think. And there's a lot of ways that I do that. I know I have a therapy dog that I take to
Mm,
the children's hospital and to university hospitals and they just when I just get there and help them and talk to about to them about the things that we do, it just literally it changes me. And I think that with we have social media and all these ways to get likes and this affirmation and through outside sources. I think when we strive for that, we miss the little things about being connected in real time. And I think that's hopefully my goal is how do I influence people to impact the environment around them.
that's wonderful. Now, is that therapy dog for you? What does it help you with?
Oh, he was. Yeah, he saved my life in a lot of ways. I met him when I was a couple years into my cancer recovery, and he helped me get out of the house and inspired me to change in a lot of ways. And yeah, I owe him a lot. And so I
Mm,
just decided when I was able to officially adopt him, he was in the army. When I was able to officially adopt him, I promised that I would continue to help his work as a therapy dog to help other people in the way that he helped me. And so one of the things we do now is we're part of a Pet Pals organization at university hospitals where we visit patients and visit the kids. We go to the cancer center. We go a little bit everywhere, and you just bring a little bit of joy to people facing their hardest times, and it always turns into something more. It turns into me sharing my story, and it just turns to and just into like hours of healing and laughter and crying and just immersing ourselves in our own pain, but at the same time is being in the moment. And I think it's really hard in a hard when you're facing a hard time and or going when you're uncertainty, it's hard to be present. And I think being present is a place where I know I heal and where all of us heal. And I think it's just the more that we can be present, the better that we can be. And I think that that's the goal, is to try to bring that presence to the patients and just to get a little bit of joy.
wow. And you've got such a powerful story and a lot of clarity along with that story that I love. And I know we're almost out of time, but to someone who is maybe fighting addictions, can you give us a few nuggets on what they can do, should do, or look for?
Yeah, I mean that's a hard question because I think the biggest thing about treatment and getting through it is you have to honestly, it has to be for you. You can't. I tried so many times to do it for other things, to get people off my back, or to do it for a girl, or to do it for this. It has to be you. You have to be willing to do it for yourself. And I think too, it's especially with that, they say recovery and all these things are you have to work on yourself before you can be good to anybody else. I understand that, but for me particularly, like self-care and self is helping other people. And I think when we're in the darkest times of our lives, if we're at rock bottom and we have all these things, it's just more of just me. Why did this happen to me? Why did this to me? Me. And I think the only way to really get out of that mindset, to get out of that perpetual cycle, is to be of service to someone else, just whatever however that may look, to volunteer or help your neighbor, whatever it may be. Just see what happens. And it's really hard in real time to do that when you're facing the struggles. It really is. But I promise you, once you do, your whole the way you look at things will completely change. And
Wow.
that's what I had to do.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on and being so candid. I know that's hard at times, to really tell the true story, but you've told it so well. And I thank you for that. And I want to thank our audience today for watching. And what I have done is I have put several links in the description of this. And if you want to reach out to him, I'm sure he'd be willing to talk to you, converse with you, or share some secrets with you. And I think that's very, very important. So I want to thank everyone. Michael, thank you so much for being here. And this has been a powerful story for me as well. That's why I love doing this. I always learn something. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicole.
Take care.